the city almost 15 years, and when I started with the city, I was with the planning division, and my very first assignment was to be the urban planner for District 1. So District 1 has a very special place in my heart, and so I understand your concerns and your neighborhoods, and so it's always a pleasure to be back here to speak with you. But as I mentioned, now I'm working for the Parks, Recreation and Neighborhood Services Department, and I supervise a small team, and our primary responsibility is land use and overseeing the Parkland dedication and park impact ordinance program, among policy work as well. And we have begun to look at an overview as to study our current Parkland obligation ordinances, and we're looking towards making some changes, and the city is also making some changes too. So the reason why I'm here today is I want to explain one part of the program and to give you some information, and the purpose of this is to inform you and to start giving you some basis, so that as we return to you and the city continues to have discussions about the Parkland obligation and how that can be converted to park fees and how things might be changed, you have a basis of knowledge to start with. And I want to make sure that you also know that we'll be returning to you with any proposed changes, and we seek your recommendations and your input. So that being said, I'll start with an overview of what a project's Parkland obligation is. Then I'm going to review one type of credit that we give, which is called private recreation credits, and then we can open it up for discussion and comments. Okay, so what is a Parkland obligation? So a Parkland obligation is for new residential development. It could be public or it could be private. So any new residential development within the city of San Jose is subject to two municipal code ordinances, 1938 Parkland Dedication Ordinance, or 1435 Park Impact Ordinances. And essentially what this does, in accordance and consistent with state law, the PRNS Act, it requires new private development projects to provide 3 acres of parkland for every 1,000 residents added to the community by the project.
Oh, sorry.
That's it. And so this is primarily a land dedication ordinance. These ordinances were adopted as a result of a lack of resources and funding that were lost to local jurisdictions as a result of Prop 13, where monies were taken away from being able to provide for schools and parks. And so in response to that, the state authorizes cities to adopt ordinances to require the dedication of land to help fill that need. So as a result, we do prioritize land dedication as our primary means, and as we all know, the D1 is severely shortage of parks, and new parks coming online, and how challenging that is. So especially in D1, we want to make sure that first and primary, we're advocating for new parkland so we can provide additional parks within your district. If the dedication of land is not feasible, or if it's not desired for some reason, developers can meet their obligation through other means. One is we can convert the land dedication requirement into an in lieu fee. So people commonly refer to this as park fees, and that's usually what people hear about, but again, remember, it's a land dedication ordinance. You can construct new or improve existing recreational facilities, or you can provide a negotiated combination of any of these things. We provide credits towards the Parkland obligation. There's 4 types of private credits. I'm going to go over all 4, and then I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the private recreation credits. So the first type of credit a project can receive is if it provides on-site, deed-restricted, affordable, low-income housing units. And so for every unit that is deed-restricted for a low-income unit, you can get a 50% credit towards your obligation. Second is you can provide private recreation amenities, and these are the things on site like your swimming pools, your community rooms, your picnic areas. These are private amenities that can or cannot be publicly accessible. I'm going to go into those a little bit more, but we can combine these two. So first you would get your 50%, and then you can apply your private recreation credits. And you can get up to a 50% credit for providing on-site amenities. You can get a credit for existing units, so like if you're demolishing existing single-family homes or if you have existing townhomes, we don't double dip. So we don't say you already met your obligation and now you have to meet it again. So you get a credit for any existing units that are demolished or retained. And you can also get credits for stormwater detention facilities, but we really don't see this very often. Okay, so what are private recreation credits? So why do we provide credits towards the Parkland obligation? We recognize that when you are staying on site, if you're using the pool, the Blackford Apartments or wherever you have you, you're not coming to, Ryland Pool, downtown. Or if you're having a barbecue within your community, you're not going to Rainbow Park to have a barbecue there. So we recognize that, there is on-site use does lessen the impact on our recreational facilities. Private recreation credit amenities, they can be publicly accessible or private. Most of them are private. The two types of publicly accessible we'll go over in just a minute. And so also to be able to get credit, all residents should be able to access these amenities daily during reasonable hours. So they can't be closed off. They should be fully accessible at all times to all residents. So as I mentioned, you can get up to a 50% credit towards your overall obligation by providing these types of amenities. And in order to be eligible to get credits, you have to provide at least one active element, which I'm going to go into. And then again, you can get a 50% credit for affordable units. So active elements are intended to be things like you would see in a normal park. A barbecue, a picnic area. And if you're a project of 6 stories or more, you do not have to provide an active element to receive these credits. So this is a list of the active elements you can receive credits for, and now I'm just going to go through each one just very briefly. If it's fairly obvious, I'm not going to go into any detail. If you provide a children's play area, you can get a credit. If you provide a picnic area, so a picnic area is defined as 2 tables, 3 chairs, benches, barbecue pits. You can provide a hard or soft game court. You could provide a turf playing field. So we haven't really provided credits for this. I haven't found an example. So this is just how I would envision how this would be applied if somebody were to ask for this credit. You can provide a public plaza area. So in order to, a publicly accessible plaza area, the key thing with this to keep in mind is that it has to be recreational in nature. It shouldn't be like an outdoor seating area for a restaurant. You can provide a passive, this is another publicly accessible area. This is more of a passive reflective area where you can sit and just have a more quiet reflective time. You can provide a pet amenity area, kind of referred to as a dog park. You can provide community garden plots. You can also get credits for something called inactive elements. And we're not sure why they're called inactive elements. It's a bit silly. It's a bit ridiculous to try and have to explain to everyone. But in general, for whatever reason, our existing ordinance refer to these as inactive elements, and maybe they just envision that you're lounging on your pool floating and you're being inactive. But these are the list of inactive elements you can get credit for: your swimming pool, your spas, your community rooms, and recreational rooms. So indoor, outdoor community rooms are more like a gathering space of a more informal social gathering areas. And indoor or outdoor recreation rooms are more like amenities that you would find in our community centers, game rooms, fitness rooms, that type of thing. And in order to be able to get credits for inactive elements, you have to provide at least one active element, unless you're over 6 stories. Excuse me, 5 stories or above, yeah, they have to fix that. So what we recognize with this ordinance, we recognize that when it has prescriptive language, it works well. If everybody can understand exactly what it is, and how you're going to get credit for it, or how you're not going to get credit for it, we're all better off. We like ground level publicly accessible amenities. It's something that the whole community can enjoy and share. And we also like that there's a variety of amenities that could apply, just so that increases the likelihood of lessening the impact. What we recognize doesn't work well, it's very outdated. It hasn't been updated since 2007. The language is convoluted, it's confusing, it's hard for me to explain to customers, it's hard for me to explain to the public, it's hard for me to explain to the public officials. It's not clear what's not acceptable. So we're constantly in negotiation, and does this qualify, does this not qualify? And non-recreational uses are listed as benefits. So, in your mind's eye, does this look like a recreational use to you? And there's an unclear relationship between recreational spaces and commercial spaces. We want active recreational spaces, but is it appropriate to give credit for an outdoor seating area that's next to a plaza, or just cut that out? So there's those types of ambiguities there. So next step, so we're just starting the outreach process now. So we're reaching out to each council district, commissions, different meetings. We're giving the same presentation. So we're continuing to do this. We're laying the groundwork. We're currently working with the Office of Economic Development to obtain a new land value study report to understand how much land costs, and potentially how we can look at different geographic areas to see if we can find patterns in how we can use the resources and how we can convert that to our fee schedule. And then after that, we're going to obtain a consultant report about our fees. And that's because we have not looked at our fee schedules in a long time. And within that fee schedule, we're going to look at the credits and how we charge and look at the overall Parkland obligation. And we're also actively participating in larger city efforts to potentially create a universal fee structure. And that's intended to be more like a fee stack that is just a transparent way for anybody and everybody to understand all application fees and impact fees that are part of any private development application, and how that could be put into different geographic areas and the timing of the payment. So once we have some recommendations, we'll come back to you. We'll then collect all those recommendations, make a staff recommendation based on all this outreach, all this information. We'll go to the Parks and Rec Commission for a recommendation, and then we'll go to the City Council for their consideration. And this is my contact information here, and I'm happy if Ken sends the link to give us a presentation to your group at any time. I also want to just put in a quick plug. We're making some improvements to our park naming process, and we're going to be reaching out a lot to help solicit new park names, and so we're going to be doing a lot better job coordinating with the D1 leadership group to make sure that you're receiving regular information.
We probably have like a minute or two before Mary goes on, because you were pretty fast with your presentation. If there are any questions right now, it looks like Justin first, and then Pat, or however you want to work it.
My question is, the first slide you put up that said if the development has 1,000 people, they're supposed to.
The obligation is to provide 3 acres of land for every 1,000 people added by the project.
Yeah, that just blows me away. It's like, there's not 3 acres of ground as far as I know. So it looks like the only alternative is for developers to go with the credit route. And I know that like Santana Row supposedly has a public park space somewhere on the top floor of one of their buildings, but it's kind of like a secret location. I've never been able to figure out where it is. And I don't know, maybe outside of Maggiano's restaurant, that's public space. I'm not really.
It is.
Yeah, it's a nice space actually.
Pardon me?
Oh yeah, they have music there and everything. Yeah, they activate it. Yeah, on Fridays.
Yeah, it is. D1 is particularly challenging. There wasn't a lot of new development. There's a lot of small projects for many years. You're seeing a lot of growth now. You're seeing a lot of interest. This is one of the most viable districts to be able to do new development in. Maybe following the cost of development studies on the City Council that has identified the west side as a viable place for new development to come in. And so you haven't seen a lot of parks coming online because for the longest time it was very quiet.
But they ought to be gold plated if the requirement is 3 acres per 1,000.
So typically, we challenging for us to compete with market forces to acquire land because we have to buy things at a reasonable value and we can't go over market value. So when somebody's competing for land, developers can outbid each other. We don't have that ability to do so. So we recognize how challenging it is. So we also, with our fee study, want to look and see if we can figure out some new policies so that our current ordinance says if you want to dedicate land, it has to be at least half an acre. So we want to start looking at if maybe we can start acquiring some single-family homes in some key neighborhoods and some desired neighborhoods where there's a park, so we can start assembling pieces to eventually provide that park. But I don't know. We don't know. There's a lot of studies you have to do to figure that out.
School districts maybe that.
We do partner with the school districts. We have a lot of joint use projects where we, where you're allowed to use the school site as a park during alpha hours. So that's already in place. And then for Santana Row, I've only stumbled upon the secret rooftop, publicly accessible recreation area once myself. Interesting. I felt like I was going to get kicked out of it anytime. And Maggiano's is definitely public. That was private park credits. We gave them private credits.
Justin?
No, my question wasn't that important.
Oh.
Go on to somebody else.
Oh, here we go.
Is there a way in development for people, for a neighborhood or a community to actively protest or let their needs be known for a development that might have maybe more than 6 stories, or where the developer is planning on using credits and that sort of stuff to get out of having park space? I mean, is there a method for us to let our needs be known?
Yes, so the best way for you to be involved in this process is to monitor when new development applications come online. So you can...
We are.
Yeah. So when you see a new, so let's use, for example, the Winchester Ranch project. So most of you are probably familiar with this project coming online. And this one does include a park, but let's say it didn't, and you wanted it to. So you can email me. I'd be happy to take your email. You can email the vice mayor. You can come to the public meetings. You also need to, in addition to Parks and Rec and the vice mayor's office, you also need to be involved with the planners and make sure they email and come to the community meetings with the planning division.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about El Paseo specifically.
El Paseo. That's that new big project that's coming online.
Right, and we need to make sure that there is public parkland.
Yes, so send me, the vice mayor, the planning division, a letter with your desires and where you think the park may work, so that we can take that into consideration.
I'll send you
and then make sure you come to the community meetings and have your voice be heard there.
Oh, Doris.
And probably include Daphne, who's our San Jose
Parks Commission representative.
Yeah, thank you.
Daphne Vogel was sitting right here.
Doris.
I'm just wondering what when you just said something Winchester, were you talking about the reserve property?
No.
Winchester Ranch.
Okay, so what's happened, where's the park coming in for the reserve?
The public land.
Yeah, public.
Oh, but
Yeah.
that's their contribution?
It sounds like David knows a little more about that than I do.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
So Pueblo Dios was acquired through that money.
Yeah. Can you stick around, Rebecca?
I'm happy
Okay.
to be around.
That'd be perfect. Thank you very much. And this, I think, dovetails